Welcome to the Explainer. Look, today we are unpacking a massive, paradigm-shifting evolution happening right now in the business world. We're moving way past the old sustainability buzzwords you might be used to hearing, and we're stepping into a radically different era. It's called regenerative circularity. And honestly, if you want to understand the absolute future of eco-economics, you are in exactly the right place.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a question that completely challenges how businesses have operated for the last decade or so. Is doing less harm actually enough? I mean, for years, companies have been getting high fives and celebrated simply for polluting slightly less or generating slightly less waste than they did the year before. But think about it like this. Imagine you're in a boat with a hole in the bottom. Bailing out water slower than it's pouring in might technically be doing less harm, but let's face it, ultimately, the boat still sinks. The days of getting a corporate gold star for simply slowing down the damage are coming to a very abrupt end.
To really wrap our heads around this shift, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the ESG compliance trap. Second, enter regenerative circularity. Third, the 2026 paradigm shift. And finally, moving beyond mere compliance.
All right, let's set the stage with part one, the ESG compliance trap. So, corporate accountability has been evolving for a long time, right? Back in the past, we had basic corporate social responsibility, or CSR. And let's be honest, this was largely a PR exercise. You know the drill, planting a dozen trees, taking a team photo and matching t-shirts and calling it a day. It was a nice sentiment, sure, but completely disconnected from the actual business model. Today, we have ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which focuses heavily on data and risk mitigation. But as we look toward 2026, the standard evolves entirely into regenerative circularity. This isn't just some random new trend. It is the absolute, inevitable next step in how the global market measures a company's true value.
The reality of current ESG frameworks is that they've kind of stalled out. Right now, ESG basically acts as a defensive shield. It's a risk mitigation tool mostly designed to protect a company from lawsuits, regulatory fines, or bad press. And because of this defensive posture, it often devolves into this massive, tedious box-checking exercise. You've got entire corporate departments dedicated to just filling out thousands of rows on spreadsheets, basically just to prove they were slightly less terrible than last year. It's a literal compliance trap. It focuses entirely on slowing down the damage rather than actually fixing the underlying systemic issues of how a business operates and extracts its resources.
Which brings us to part two, enter regenerative circularity.
So what is this exactly? Well, here's the defining concept of this entire shift. Regenerative circularity is a framework with two very distinct, non-negotiable halves. First up, a business must be circular. That means it creates zero waste. The end of one product's life becomes the exact beginning of a new one, keeping materials in continuous use. It's a closed loop. But here's the catch. Being circular just isn't enough anymore. The second half requires the business to be regenerative, meaning it produces a net positive ecological impact. It doesn't just take nothing, it actively gives back. Every single time that business operates, the environment, the local community, or the ecosystem actually gets stronger, cleaner, and healthier just because that business exists.
And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between these two mindsets. The current ESG model is strictly about doing less harm, right? Just minimizing your negative footprint. But the 2026 mindset is about actively healing. Think about the massive operational difference between those two approaches for a second. One manages decline, the other creates abundance. If a factory right now focuses on reducing its toxic runoff, well, that's just doing less harm. But if a factory is intelligently redesigned so that the water leaving its pipes is actually cleaner and more nutrient-dense than the water it originally took in from the river, that is actively healing.
Moving right along to part three, the 2026 paradigm shift.
Now you might be wondering, why 2026? It's not just a random date chosen out of thin air. It is projected to be the critical pivot point where regenerative circularity moves from being this forward-thinking concept used by a few niche brands to the absolute inevitable business standard. And why is that? Because frankly, we are hitting a physical wall. The global economy currently consumes over 100 billion tons of materials a year. Think about that volume, and roughly 90% of that is just wasted. By 2026, the convergence of stricter global regulations, intense consumer demand for total transparency, and the sheer physical reality of this extreme resource scarcity is going to force the market's hand. Honestly, if you wait until 2026 to start adapting, your business model will already be obsolete.
This paradigm shift fundamentally rewires a company's DNA. Just map it out. Under the old compliance model, the core focus is purely on risk mitigation.
And the ultimate goal is just creating less negative impact. Basically, keep your head down, do the paperwork, and stay out of trouble. But under regenerative circularity, the focus becomes system healing, and you're aiming for a true net positive impact. You stop asking your board of directors, hey, how do we protect ourselves from environmental liabilities? And you start asking, how does our core product actually repair the world? It's a complete 180-degree turn in corporate strategy.
Finally, let's wrap up with Part 4, moving beyond mere compliance.
So the crucial point is, how do we actually do this? Here is the tangible playbook for navigating this evolution. Step 1, intentionally abandon the compliance mindset. You've got to stop looking at sustainability as a legal checklist or some marketing gimmick. Step 2, redesign systems for zero waste. This means auditing your entire supply chain and closing the loops so that the word trash literally ceases to exist in your operational vocabulary. Everything has to be an input for something else. And Step 3, implement actions with a net positive impact. Find a way for your business operations to act almost like a forest, enriching the soil around it, cleaning the air, and leaving the ecosystem undeniably better than you found it.
The core thesis of this whole explainer is really quite simple. Survival requires actively healing the system, not just slowing its decline. This is an existential reality for the market. As we rapidly approach 2026, companies that are merely trying to slow their rate of decline are going to find themselves vastly outcompeted by organizations that are fundamentally designed to heal, to regenerate, and to create abundance. The compliance trap is a dead end. Regenerative circularity is literally the only viable path forward for long-term economic and ecological survival.
So I want to leave you with this one lingering question today. As we approach 2026, will your model regenerate, or will it expire? Whether you are a business owner, an employee, an investor, or just a consumer making everyday choices at the store, this is the ultimate question. You now have the framework to look past those empty buzzwords and demand genuine net positive healing. Apply this concept to the organizations you support and ask yourself which side of history they are going to be on. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.